I live just south of 120. I was just, just south. That was a few years ago.
Okay, maybe that. Joe, never mind. I didn't have my glasses on or something.
Okay, everybody ready?
Big stuff.
Yeah. Let's do this. Okay, let's call to order, 7:01.
Beckwith,
Here.
Colwell. Here. Deal.
Here.
Falcapiti. Here. Coxini.
Here.
Mimi. Sheldon.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, Bob? The pledge?
With following, with respect, dignity, and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, darn. Okay. The Warren Newport Public Library District provides community with access to information, kindles the imagination of children and adults, and supports lifelong learning.
Safety instruction.
Yes, just a brief reminder, I'm right outside the door. The first left is the vending machine, then the washrooms, and the exercise. Thank you.
Okay, first is consent. Anybody have anything you want to take off? Do I have a motion then?
I move we accept we approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or nay? Or abstain? Okay. President's report. My report, I decided to do a written report on page 79. And also, I just wanted to add this. I know maybe a lot of you saw this, but this was in the Tribune. It was an obit of Mayor Welton. I just thought it was kind of interesting. One of the things in here was that I did not know this, that he was 30 years old when he was elected mayor, and he was the youngest mayor in Illinois. The boy mayor.
Wrong with the family.
Interesting. Just pass it around. Pretty much. Okay, other reports. Anyone? Okay. We have two bits of correspondence. One is a note, thank you note from the Welton family, and one is a thank you note to the board from Brian for the gift we gave him. One wants that can read it all. Okay. No legal counsel, right? No. Okay. Public comment?
I have a public comment about the term.
Okay.
Is now the time to do it or later?
No, now would be a good
Now
time.
would be the
Mhm.
time. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. I feel very strongly and urge the board to adopt a 4-year term, starting with the next election, so that it wouldn't affect anybody that's currently on the board except for the people that run in the next election. The reasons for this would be, first of all, I think a 6-year term is really too long of a commitment to ask of somebody, particularly a new person, that you may want to attract to the board. I think a 4-year term will result in a greater pool of candidates that might consider running. I think that's important. Also, if we look historically at the last, I don't know, at least the last 10 or 15 years of elections, there's almost always an unfilled term that's being filled in that election. So there's always, just like in this past one that Nancy filled, there's always a 2-year term, so that there's always somebody out of this that had a 6-year term that doesn't fill it and resigns. So I think there would be less chance of that happening. I proposed this many years ago, is when I was a trustee, And I was told at the time that this was really a bad idea because if we adopted this due to the fact that right now there's normally two, and 3 trustees running, that if we did something like this, that the wrong people could get in control of the board. And I find that very ironic because this was voted down and the wrong people did get in control of the board. So that, I think the whole issue of making sure that the right people are in control of the board is to make sure that there's good candidates available to run for office versus having unfilled election slots that somebody could win with 50 votes. So I strongly urge that the board adopt that and grandfather everybody that's currently on the board, so in other words, enact this starting with the next election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we allowed to ask a question?
Not really.
Okay.
We generally discourage it, but if he wishes to,
Are you okay if he asks you a question?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Define control.
Define control?
Yep.
Well, I think if control is when a majority takes over the board that results in some actions that are similar to what we had in the last few years, last 2 years anyway, that I think nobody wants to see happen again.
Thank you.
Okay, reports of standing committees, page 81 and 83. Questions or comments about those?
Did you want me to talk about the art?
No, you're down
It's
later. Unless, well, let's just wait till later. Okay, let's see, 11, we need some people, 2 people to audit minutes for the IFLA report. The sooner the better. Anybody who could come tomorrow would be most appreciated. 2 trustees need to do it. It should not be me. It should not be Nancy.
I can do it. What time?
9 a.m. she says.
Oh,
As soon as we open, but as long as you come tomorrow, it doesn't matter if you come later on the day.
They do it together though.
No, they don't have to be here at the same time.
Yeah.
okay.
You allow me to excuse myself, I can call my son. He has a job interview in Milwaukee tomorrow. And I don't know what time that is, but I promise to take it.
Is anyone else besides Bob, can anyone else do it without her having to call?
I can do it like, earliest is 11.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Bob,
I
11 is that
assume
work?
that what they're doing is checking to make sure that all of the minutes that should be there are there and
And
that
that
they
they're
are
all
signed.
signed. Those are the 2
That's all you
criteria,
do.
that's all that it is. Yeah.
Yes.
We did it before.
Yeah. Everything we do it for the IT.
I've never done it because I was the secretary the whole time.
I think I did it.
It must have been you and Mary Ann, maybe.
I've done it
I've
twice.
closed
done it,
sessions
but
or-
I think maybe it was
Did you
when I
close
was
session
vice
ones maybe?
president.
No, it's just,
And
I've done it
Ryan.
and it only takes,
Yeah, you
10 or
just-
15 minutes.
Yeah.
The one thing is that Ryan said to let you know that we think he'd like to next year move this forward and do this a month earlier, so
Yeah,
that
that
there
would-
isn't.
so we
this
wouldn't
kind of
have to do it
rush.
tomorrow. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, thank you very much. I know that's short notice. I really appreciate that. Executive Director's Report, page 87.
And he asked if I read this?
Please. Mhm.
Okay, because it's supposed to include information and update on strategic planning. We're preparing to launch the community survey on September 1st. Ryan is in the process of scheduling interviews with community leaders to be conducted late August through October. Various members of the staff are taking lead on various elements of the project, including World Cafe-style town hall meetings on September 30th and October 3rd, the various focus groups that will be conducted, and the user experience study. The board is scheduled to do a SOAR, Strengths, Opportunities, Aspirations, Results analysis of WMPL at the September Committee of the Whole meeting. And I also wanted to let you know that we are tweaking to fit the survey, Constant Contact. That tool has some limitations. Like there's a fields that you can only put 10 items in. So instead of putting adult, children's, and teen books, we've just combined it and put books because you can only put 10. And how many did we have, Jan?
Almost 20.
Yeah, so we had to kind of do some of that, so we are tweaking that a little bit to make it work. And that's it. Other than what you wrote in written.
Comments or questions? Wow. Okay, new business. First thing is term length. Do I have a motion?
And it was not in your packet, but the resolution as it would, this was the
If
attorney.
it passes, is at our places.
Yes.
Does everyone see it?
It's on the front and the back of the page.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we want to release the title.
No, just what's the motion?
Just on the phone. Make a motion that the board adopts a resolution reducing library trustees' term of office to 4 years.
I'll second. So we had a good discussion about this at committee of the whole, so I would just say for discussion, if you have some revelation that wasn't already gone over earlier, any discussion, anything to add to what was said earlier. Please.
I'm still very torn on this idea, and I'm not sure which way to go, but where I'm feeling is that I like having the safety net of having no majority up for re-election in any 1 2-year cycle. I think it gives us a little bit more cushion, especially when we're talking about some of the principles that guide our library. They can be unpopular sometimes, particularly some of the principles around access, around openness. There are groups that tend to oppose that. And I am concerned that I've seen other libraries, not in this area, but maybe further south of here, that have been taken over by groups that, for whatever reason, seek to restrict access to some materials. And those groups can get a lot of opinion on their side very quickly, especially some of the new media materials, internet, movie, etc. I think it's easier for us to stick to the guidelines of the American Library Association if we're not worried about groups taking over the library every 4 years on some trumped up family values charge. It's not much, but it's what I got.
Okay.
And I too am torn. I keep going back, I think what Steve said, that we've been filling vacancies. That really hasn't been our history in the past. I think we've run pretty steady for quite a while. Refer to Nancy's situation with the high school, knowing that the majority of the board could take over the board like we had in the last year. My thing is the time, the money, and the effort that it took to get things right after the majority of the board had taken over. I'm not going to be here to do that again. So, I think the last meeting, it was pointed out that most people that ran for 4-year terms ran for a second 4-year term. So there you have that too. I just think experience on the board is pretty important. Can I just interrupt?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
totally appreciate all the work that has gone into thinking this through too. Go ahead.
I am still not convinced, I'm totally not convinced that going to 4-year terms is going to suddenly get us a plethora of wonderful candidates who wouldn't have run for 6-year terms. And it seems to me that if we can get better candidates by going to 4-year terms, that we should get really great candidates for the 2-year terms. Who was elected the 2-year term 3 years ago? I don't buy that we're going to get better candidates by going to 4-year terms. That's wishful thinking. I think that right now we're trying to fix something that ain't broke.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
What she said?
Yeah, I mean, we went for 6, okay, and we can walk anytime we want, okay?
Please. When you run for 6, you should stay for 6.
Right, so what's the point of going for 4? If somebody's gonna walk, they're gonna walk.
Not necessarily. I've been torn too, and I've been on the fence really up until the last few days when I thought about it. But really, my point of view is it's not necessarily the candidates, and not necessarily somebody taking over the board. It's as Sue mentioned, the time and investment that it takes to be on board. When I left 4 years ago, I was done. I was done after 6 years. I was tired after 6 years. Now, we got the Sheldon here who's an Energizer Bunny who just keeps on going, which is admirable.
Well,
So let me finish.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that was a compliment.
Thank you.
So the 6 years was enough for me, but as Sue mentioned, because of the mess the library found itself in, I felt compelled to come back for another 6.
Thank you.
However, I would say that if it was a 4-year term, I probably would have re-upped after a second 4 years to go for, another term. And when you think of it that way, they've been having some longevity. You are going to have experienced people on the board. So, all our arguments are, we are putting out thoughts of what could happen. I don't think there's any wrong or right way, but I'm going to go for the 4 years just because I think 4 years is just simply, 6 years is just simply too long.
Andrew, you're the only one who hasn't spoken.
I wanted to talk first about the restriction on materials, and don't quote me, but you're very clever and quick at these things. I believe it was the Illinois compiled statute prohibits the restriction of things based on religious grounds, or, I would like to make sure that we have all, people who may be young or old, or whatever age it is, whether it's they're exploring their sexuality, whatever it is, they have the materials here to look at them, and I would never want those restricted. I do believe that might be covered by the Illinois compiled statutes. So there are protections. And whether this vote goes either 4 years or 6 years, I do think it's very important we develop a culture where we find people, and it doesn't matter to me exactly how that is. The Park District's really good at doing it, whether we get a Citizens Advisory Council or some way to seek out and develop talent of people who are interested and passionate about the library in one way or another, and welcome them in, and so that they become vested, and then we'll run. Whether 6 years, 4 years, or even for a temporary 2-year position where someone's like Sue is willing to step up and serve. So that's what I have to say.
May I say something? Okay. During the time I was on the board, we did have a gentleman who was very seriously talking about running for the board because of issues with some materials we had in the library that he felt didn't belong here. What George is talking about is not impossible. You need somebody who cares about this and is willing to recruit some, put the time and effort into recruiting somebody. And, yes, it could happen.
You could say that with the 6 years too.
Yeah.
It can happen with the 6 years, although most of the time with 6-year terms, you do not have 4 seats up. It happens, but usually it doesn't. And it means that whoever wants to protect our children from this trash has to be willing and able to sustain that motivation over 2 elections. And most people don't have issues that they feel strongly enough that they would do that.
Okay, let's wrap this up then. And have a vote. I think it should be a roll call too this time. Just,
Did you read?
the motion is that, no.
Oh, yes, you did. I'm sorry.
That the board adopt a resolution reducing library trustees' term of office to 4 years.
So yes is to vote for 4 years.
4 years.
Nini,
No.
Leo,
No, since 6 years.
Yeah, correct.
No.
Sheldon,
No.
Katsinis,
No.
Caldwell,
Aye.
Farkafisi,
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Nays have it.
Okay. All right, going on to IPLAR.
I would just, can I have a comment?
Sure.
I would like to say that I'm very impressed with our discussion, our vote, and, it doesn't matter to me that it didn't go my way. What matters to me is that we had a lovely discussion, and it went.
adults.
And it,
I
I'm
wouldn't
still
go that
sure
far.
that
My wife doesn't.
life is well served, but
I agree,
See
and
how well that can go?
I have to say, I do see both sides of the argument. I understand why you all see it a different way, so.
By
Let's
the way,
press on.
Thanks for all the work you put into it.
No worries,
You,
that's
that's
okay. I'm good with that. Okay, so, a motion on IPLAR, please.
I move that the Illinois Public Library Annual Report IPLAR for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2015 be accepted for filing.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Okay. Per capita
I have
report?
something to report that we, as I indicated in the email that I sent out, we just recently received information that this does not have to be filed until January, so we're going to take some time on that.
Yeah, I like how they did that to the schools.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Andrew.
That's it?
Right.
Okay, you want to do the next one?
Yep, fundraising workshop, Ryan said that most of the doodle poll comes back, we should probably be looking tentatively scheduled for October 17th. But at this point, only 2 board members had responded, so please, if you could respond to that doodle poll, we want to make sure that if you want to be there, that we pick a date that you can do it, so. But according to current, it was like 13 of the people who were invited could make it.
That's
Excuse me, I didn't get that.
When was this sent out?
Yeah.
I don't
Long time
remember.
ago.
A
seeing
doodle
it.
poll, yeah.
Long time.
Before me? I didn't get it.
Oh, no, not-
All I know is that
oh.
there were 2.
I think 10, 17 is okay.
I don't remember seeing it.
Is it a weekday?
I'm trying to think if it was during your email problems, but I think it was after that, Sue. It's been a long time. Although I have to say, when I saw it, I was very confused because I only saw, who at this table got it?
I don't remember.
Okay, because usually you can see everybody's name, and I thought it seemed very truncated, what I was able to view in terms of who was invited, and I wasn't sure if that's something you could block or if it was accidental.
Okay, well, we'll send it
You
out again.
ask him about
Right,
that, yeah.
right.
Sounds like a good.
It sounds like a lot of people did not get it. Did you get it, Bob?
I recall.
If you just want, October 17th is good for me, if you. just
Okay, so
think
would
about
you
that.
like to respond now? That'd be
Yeah.
fine, if anybody wants to respond
I
now.
think that's fine with me, it's after October 15th. so.
Okay, October
15th,
17th,
yeah.
Sue, okay?
Is that
Andrea, you said it's
what's the
okay?
15th? It's the filing deadline for all personal tax returns with extensions.
Oh, I should have
Doesn't
known.
everybody know that? It's April 15th.
We all
Did you
file
say
on
okay?
time, Andrea.
Okay,
Oh,
Nancy?
you said October 17th, and that's
October
a
17th,
Saturday?
yes.
What's
I
Saturday?
believe it's okay. yeah.
Okay, so Nancy is an okay?
I have to
Bob?
check on that.
Okay, Bob?
I can't commit right now.
That's fine, if you just get back, George, did you already?
Sounds good to me.
George, okay. Okay, and then we'll just wait, that'd be great, so then the rest of you really don't have to respond, except Tom and Bob. And you know what, if you just send me an email, if that date isn't good, but or would you rather he send this doodle poll to you?
I'll send you an email.
Well, everybody shoot for the 17th, right?
Right, we're shooting for the 17th, you could have picked another date, though, and you could let him know if other dates were better, but at
Just
this
saying.
point, it looked the best for that, so particularly let us know if you,
I'll consult with my PR person.
okay, thank you very much.
And your social secretary.
Yes.
Okay, George, I'll take
I'm
yours.
bookkeeper.
Okay,
Okay, so you're gonna check with him on that?
I will,
We all got it,
definitely.
okay, thank you. Okay, E is Art Acquisition Committee update, Andrea.
I'm sure you all read your art committee minutes. So just to give you a more thorough idea of what it is, so Warren Township High School has some very high-level art students, people who probably will be majoring in art, and they do independent art study. So they will be given a presentation from the art committee, and they will be creating pieces of art about that size. I think it's 2 of them, 2 or 3 of them. When you walk into Coco's Cove, if you look at the most visible wall above the window, that's the spot. It's in that corner. So they will be submitting to the art committee presentations, and we will select the one that we like the best. And then the students will, for free, we will pay for the materials, create those pieces of art based on the sketches. Then the estimated cost is about $500. The art committee has, I'm hoping that we can have a discussion and decide how the art committee will fund this, or the library will fund this, or we will do fundraising. But as it stands right now, the art committee has 0 budget, which the board can decide to give the $500 or a portion thereof. We still can change the budget before it's submitted, or grant, if it's not the full thing, the art committee the ability to raise funds to get the $500. So,
Bake sale?
we can't do that.
are you baking?
So we're having 2 separate pieces?
Is it 2 or 3?
3, okay. Multiple artists contributing to each one? Or just one?
Yes, and the
You
students
think?
will all be painting
The
together.
students that are identified are those at the high school who are taking independent study in art. So they're like the most, yeah.
So it may be, they may submit, and it doesn't have to be paint, I think, but it
Yeah.
could be photographs, it could be 3-dimensional. We really don't want to restrict their creativity.
And the $500
Be
is
toward-
generous?
That's what the art,
See, going over the 500?
that's what the art teachers suggested.
The,
They wanted
the
to give
plan
them-
is, I believe, to paint them on masonite panels with acrylics. I don't think it's
No, I
anything.
think he was saying, oh, was it acrylics, or was he saying like, some of it would be like wall paint? You know, the
Oh.
big mural, that biggest one we did, that huge one, that was done with wall paints. So,
Like Benjamin Moore?
yeah, I
More
couldn't
or
give it,
less.
but
Just a better version of the same propane.
So what you want tonight is some guidance on the fund.
well, the art committee we've talked about it in the past, but we know we cannot solicit donations without permission from the board. No committee has the ability to do that. I can't go and ask, we can't do anything to raise funds other than, write checks ourselves, than what you allow us to do. So you can either, we would like to move forward with the project. We think it's a really great project. And you guys are welcome to see when we have presentation night with the students, you're welcome to come in. And that's how Joe got interested in the committee. And,
So
but we
basically,
need
you
to,
either want us to give you some money or to give you permission to
Get money.
get some money.
or it doesn't have to be all one or the other, it can be, but the students are obviously donating all of their hours and counting.
Yeah.
If somebody decides to do a 3D out of medium density fiberboard, are we supplying that material?
That's not the plan. The plan is for painting on masonite panels. That's what was discussed.
But they're not limited to that. The teacher just.
Somebody said 3D.
It could be, but it's, I don't see that adding tremendous amounts of money. We could also give them the budget, you've got $500, that's your budget.
And we're framing it? Is that part of the expense or unframed?
They're looking at me. Framing was not discussed.
Well, the frame to this is simply just, some wood.
Can I just make a
Kevin, yes, you
suggestion?
certainly can.
Speaking of this piece of artwork, that's masonite on the back, and we've gone through tremendous lengths to keep it attached to the wall.
It's heavy.
Like
Well, it's
bolting
not
into
that
the
it's
wall.
heavy, what happens is that it warps. So it's not the best suited material to paint on. That thing is never coming off the wall, I think, at this point. Because we actually had the artist come back 3 times. So we had to keep anchoring in spots because we didn't want to obviously ruin her artwork. So she actually came back in and finished up around the trim and everything to cover up where we had to anchor it down. So just bear that in mind, that masonite might seem like it's a cheap material, but it's affected by moisture and temperature. So you really have to consider how you're anchoring it and supporting it on the wall.
I would think of thin laminate plywood because it's more dimensional frame-wise.
How much more do you
Depends
think?
on how thick it is though too. I mean, plywood would work too.
Kevin, do you have any idea, like, an estimate of what it would take to keep it flat? Whether they
It
mount
has
it
to
to
be
2
framed, I
by
mean, it has to be
4s?
framed, the best way to do it is to frame it from the back side.
Like a 2 by 4 frame that they send it to, nail it to, and then,
It depends upon how big it would be. I mean, if you're talking
maybe about that size, yeah.
It'd have to be structurally framed on the back side.
My impression from, like even if you go to art fairs, a lot of the work that you see at art fairs is painted on masonite.
Because it's cheap.
But also, but I think it's a pretty good surface to paint on. Now, whether it's not a good surface for warping,
It's
that's
not
another
a
question.
right, it's not a good surface to be a structural surface to
Right.
hang. It has to be framed on the back side. That was not framed, that's literally flat against the wall. And originally it was glued and tacked in a couple of places. And actually, it's 2 separate panels, just like where the book seam is. It's 2 separate panels. So each panel was warping its own way.
Oh, nice.
Was
So
it
they
painted
have-
on the backside?
No.
I don't think so, Virginia.
So they would have to, like, basically screw it to create a frame, like of 2 by 4s, and
The-
then mount it on, screw it to the frame in several places, then,
Well, the artwork up front, behind the
and that has.
subjects, the artist that did that, she had a carpenter. I don't know whether he did the framing on the back, he also did the framing on the front, so that's really thick. It's not solid, of course, but you know what I'm saying, it's got a frame behind it that you can't see, and it's supporting. So those panels are up against that frame, so it doesn't torque, it doesn't.
We
Then they
didn't talk
mounted
about
that-
whether canvas.
They mounted
Maybe
that to the
just
wall.
Paint
They're all
canvas would be better than,
Stretch.
yeah.
Stretch canvas
Which is
would be more
certainly-
expensive. Marine grade plywood might address that issue.
It seems like these might be questions that we should ask Rocco.
We can certainly ask Katrina Davis Salazar, who was the artist for the ones up front.
You're also gonna wanna consider how we're gonna treat the edges of the artwork as well. Because if you did plywood, it's gonna look like plywood.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just gonna look like plywood.
that would be good, I wouldn't think.
It's not necessarily.
Still, you got plywood edges.
Kevin, would you come to the next art committee meeting, please?
My own limited canvas and do a stretch over a frame.
Well, this still comes to the question of the money.
Yeah.
Was Katrina on the art committee?
No. But we can certainly have her number, we can ask her to join us as a consultant. I'm sure she'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, I think he would be our expert.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
And as Sue pointed out, there are industrial art students over there, and
Learn
there's
how to frame.
Project Lead the Way, the engineers as well. Oh, and my daughter's dating is a construction engineer. He's got a job.
Other thoughts on this?
Does
I
anybody?
move that we authorize expenditure of up to $500 from the expendable trust fund to fund this art project.
I second.
For the whole thing, not per.
Yeah, just $500. Anything more than that, yeah, if it turns out to cost more than that, then Andrea still has problems,
Then we'll
but.
come back to you and say, please authorize us to seek donations. You know, that we can do without having to change the
Can we
budget.
make that motion? We've got this list as information only, not action.
Yeah, E is. says
Information
possible
and
action.
possible action.
Excellent.
Were these funds, any of these funds earmarked for the acquisition intervention?
Well, Rich,
The
they
expendable
weren't.
trust, I don't.
But I would like to point out, there was a very sizable donation to Coco's Cove back in the beginning, $50,000, and the only thing that has been spent in that room so far has been the sign, Coco's Cove. And one of the things that the art should do is reflect the theme of Coco's Cove. So there was a $50,000 donation, and whatever the signage cost was all that was spent of it.
And that's in the expendable trust?
Not anymore,
Oh.
but there's money in the expendable. The expendable trust has,
Oh, that's what we talked about last meeting. wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
expendable trust has a fund balance of $32,000, of which $17,825 is unrestricted. So it certainly has the money.
Yeah, good.
So the art acquisition committee was, I think, formed after I left, but my understanding is that the committee was supposed to be self-funded. Am I wrong? Or what?
You're wrong.
Okay, so there was always an intent that some funds could come from the library to support that committee.
They already
All the funds that.
that we bought things for already, yeah, come from one. But it was authorized.
So there was the donation of the pays and base. But the art committee was funded originally with two consecutive $50,000 expenditures out of the endowment, what was it called? Expendable trust fund. So a lot of that was spent, but in neither
but-
year did we come anywhere near that.
I was
amount.
gonna say, the second year we didn't spend any of it. Isn't that correct?
No, we did, we bought the big, huge mural.
You're saying, but I don't think we spent how much did we spend altogether?
I think it was less than 25 this
Yes.
year. It was way, I think one year
Yes.
it was only 17. Even though it was funded at 100,000 over 2 years, I would even think we spent 50,
Right.
but it was very little.
Is anybody else uncomfortable with the fact that we had the library and all their staff go through months of analysis of their departments and where they could cut every single dime, and I mean every single dime, does anybody feel at least uncomfortable that when we're asking the staff to cut every single dime to spend $500 for artwork, which I think is a luxury. Even though I love that painting. I love that painting. I think it's great. But I'm torn of telling Ryan and his staff to look at every penny, and we spend $500 like it's giant. And I'm torn because I am for the arts, but I don't, to me, it's almost sending the wrong signal.
Are there other art plans in your future? Or
This
is
is,
this like?
this is the big project this year, and some framing, but there's not a lot. We're not, this is the biggest project this year. We're also going through the archives of old stuff
Yes, I'm gonna.
and deciding what to get rid of. But, and, you know, if you're uncomfortable with the money, that's fine too. Just authorize the art committee the ability to, you know, do some fundraising.
I think it's more the perception than anything. I mean, $500 in the big scheme of things, the grand scheme of things, isn't a lot of money, but it's the message that we're sending is what I think, as I said, think about that is what I'm comfortable with.
Go ahead.
Besides the students, what else is in school supply?
The teachers' supervision.
And the teachers are on payroll when you're doing that, or?
Well,
There's a teacher
There's
supervising.
independent
Right, but he
independent
asked if
study.
he's on the payroll when he's here working at the library, and I'm not sure.
He's paid for supervising independent study.
Right,
Probably just builds those hours into that and.
okay.
just pay-
I wouldn't feel confident saying yes to that, but okay.
Yeah.
It's not, the teachers get salary, and part of his salary would be the supervision of independent study students. He's not punching the clock in.
Anyone
I think
else?
Tom has,
Excuse me?
I think Tom's got a very good point, it's perception.
George?
When we spend money for things like artwork, we're not just throwing it away. And I want to make sure everyone understands, we're not just tossing money at an art project. Yes, we have to pinch every penny we can. We go through every budget to look for any possibility of slack in that budget. Why? Because we are responsible to the taxpayers to make sure that their money is spent to support the mission of the library. Part of the mission of the library, though, involves making this place that this physical space that we're in, a space that is conducive to its mission, where students and children can come in, feel welcomed, not see stark white walls because we don't want to pay for something on them. I don't think it's something that takes away from budget. I mean, yes, it's something we could spend on books, but are we buying enough books? Yes, it's something we could spend on databases. We already have enough databases. That's why we go through these systems one at a time. We don't go through and say, let's cut everything we can. We go through and say, what can be cut? And I think 500 for an art budget for a year is minuscule. I don't think that's excessive at all. And I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially coming from expendable trust. We are raising money to cover it. This isn't even taxpayer dollars per se. This is money donated to the library by people who want to see this library be a better place. And I think, especially with this type of art project, we're doing something that uses that money very wisely.
Well, again, it's, as I mentioned, it's not the money. It's the perception that we're sending to the library, to the library staff. And that's what I'm not comfortable with.
I have difficulty with this when I'm at art committee with your idea. I mean, as a librarian, it is really hard for me, you know, when I look at, I mean, I was the one that wept over the database that was cut that I thought was such a great database. To me, it's not about the $500 at this moment, but it is about what is the future of the art committee. And what is it that, the art committee, just by the word requisitions, the art committee is not going to be able to continue with the budget situation that we have. I think that, to me, that is a bigger discussion that we need to have at our committee, which is what are we going to do with this committee in the future? Can we really afford to keep it as an art acquisitions committee? I like this mural program. It's a nominal amount of money, and it will really add to Coco's Cove. And so from that standpoint, you know, but the art committee cannot exist without funding. And I think long-term, that's something that we need to address as a committee separately from here.
Is there any possibility of signage going up, telling people that this artwork is not taxpayer dollars, but donated funds or something, to avert that wrong message?
I think we can definitely say that we're working, that we're working in partnership with the high school, and these are donated art hours.
Right. I think if some a construction person came in and said, you know, I'm willing to fix this or do this project, donating my time, we would come up with the money if it was something we needed or would improve the library. Just because students don't normally get paid doesn't mean that their hours are not valuable. If we paid somebody to do it, the price would be much, much higher, including, you know, the paints and the materials that of the artwork that we see is much less than what it actually was to produce. So let's not forget that just because they don't get paid doesn't mean that their hours creating the work is not very valuable.
How much did that run?
Can't remember, but Jan,
I want to say between 3 and 3,500 maybe? Under 5?
Okay, anyone have anything else
the
new to add?
big mural was 10,000.
Anyone have anything else new to add? Because we have a motion to vote on. Oh,
I'll second.
Oh, I thought that was second.
Andrew
Yes.
seconded.
Andrew seconded. I do wonder, do I and or you abstain from the committee, or do we get to vote?
no, we did just vote.
Okay.
Okay, let's have a roll call because it's.
Shanda? Aye.
Katsini?
Aye.
Mimi?
Aye.
Dio?
Aye.
Bagabisi?
Aye.
Beckwith?
Aye.
Caldwell?
No.
Ayes have it.
All right. Items for September agenda. Anybody have something to add besides what's on the list?
I would like to discuss what options we might have for making the recordings of these minutes more useful. As in the ones that I've looked at lately, the audio is very hard to hear and to understand. It seems to me that if we're going to do this, we should do it right. Yeah. And right now, I don't think that the videos are particularly useful.
Are you talking about these videos?
Yes. And nothing that you have said tonight is going to be audible on that tape. I can guarantee that.
Excellent.
He likes that seat.
Yes.
Okay, anyone have anything else?
Where are we with the staff area and point?
Yeah, that is for committee of the whole, I believe, right? It's on for committee of the
But
whole.
there's nothing for this, there's no.
Not for this meeting, no. It's put on for committee of the whole.
But it can be added after the committee
Yes.
of the whole.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's, but I believe believe what he said was that there would be a recommendation of one of the people, one of the designers, that we would have, that he'd have a recommendation for September.
Would it be better, would the discussion of what we can do to either improve the audio, or maybe we're just gonna say forget the whole thing, whatever, would that be more appropriate to committee of the whole than to the next month?
Yeah, let me talk to
meeting?
Ryan about that. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I like that.
Okay.
and
It
Kevin,
may end
there are
up-
ways that we can prove it, you know, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, there's just money.
Yeah, I mean, it may end up
$500
as
is
long.
money.
Yeah, but we had mics when we were in the meeting.
Well, that's hooked up to that system in there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so in here, it's a little different situation because you're all facing each other, and so all of your voices are going in towards the table. There's different types of mics that could be placed in here that would pick that up. But of course, they have to be wired and, you know, other things considered. So. But it's possible, I think it's possible. Just like that.
Or we could have voted to eliminate it.
Or we could meet in the meeting room.
Oh, except we have to bump so much programming out of there when we do that. I hate to do that to patrons.
Sue likes
Okay,
this.
anything else for the other agenda items for the regular?
In a big circle.
Bob?
I just have a question on the added material that came with the packet. It's here, and the rails, short tapes for trustees.
Yeah.
Are they, this here is there anything for us to do? What-
It's for your board training, or if you're interested, you can sign up by Zoom. These are free, correct? Yeah, these are free.
And is
This
this
one,
just a solicitation? This didn't come from,
no, I don't know.
I
Yeah,
guess
this
that was
was
my
added
question,
to-
what's the validity?
this wasn't board driven?
Yeah.
No, everyone got one.
So,
I can tell you that
It's a
Jack
commercial.
Hayes, the Frederick Quinn person who's speaking, is the person who assisted with the District 56 referendum. So
he knows his stuff.
he knows his stuff. I don't think we're going to be building anything anytime soon, though. That's all this is about.
This is if you have a referendum in the future, near future.
Building referendum specifically.
But this, these, I mean, I've done a few of these. I mean, I know we all have these different,
Yeah, Ryan just wanted to remind you
Yeah.
that you have that option if you want to take advantage
Okay,
of
so
that.
this one is.
yeah, so
good to
if
go.
you just go on the Rails website and make an account, well, I don't even think you need to have an account to see the courses.
They asked for an email address.
Okay.
I put in the library email address and it came up invalid.
Really? Call well after.
Yeah, I didn't recognize my email, library email address.
Because that's the one we use here in the library, we just
Yeah.
WSPL.
Yeah, that's the one I use.
I think it may have to be
I have to check.
registered.
You have to register. Have you registered under that email?
No,
Okay, let me talk to Ryan and give you
I think
the
that
instructions.
the director has to register.
He has to register or give you the instructions on how to do it.
Right.
Okay, either one would work.
Okay, put me on that list.
Okay.
I'd like to point out, if we get moving, there's a slim possibility we might be able to finish this in less than an hour.
Okay, we're up to public forum.
Anyone want to speak?
Okay, and we decided, remember, thanks to Gina helping me remember, that the budget hearing is going to be prior to committee of the whole, not prior to the regular board meeting. I tried to change that to the 21st, and that was my mistake. So, so that's on the 1st. Also, next committee of the whole on the 1st. How are we on stuff for committee of the whole, speaking of which? What's going on with policies for that? The packet needs to be done a week from Friday.
Okay. Do you have one first, I believe, or?
I think I took a look at them. There are just three, right?
Yes.
2005, which already we had with the changes that Andrea recommended of content.
Yeah.
And then 4005, which is volunteers, and 4013, which is gift donation. That has to be made consistent now with what we're planning to have.
Sorry.
The idea of the restricted funds.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when can we have those? Ryan and I.
Okay, are you doing the initial changes?
I thought you wanted to do the initial change. I can do them,
I-
you can do them, doesn't matter to me.
Let me look at the three of them tomorrow.
Okay, that's great.
Because we have, I have Andrea's wording available, right? Yeah, okay.
Do you need those policies, George?
Please send them to me in case I don't have them.
All right, you get, send me electronic versions also.
Okay,
Word
and then
copy.
we're also going to have the idea of the CERC stat report on the bookmobile issue
Yes.
for the September committee of the whole.
Yes.
Anybody else have anything else for that that's already not? Capital projects update you asked for before. And
An update of the.
update on the staff launch, okay?
The only thing finance committee will have is the July financial statements.
I already asked,
Anything else?
yeah, I have that. Okay. Staff Development Day, September 18th, Van Book Weeks, September 27th to the October 3rd. Anybody else have any announcements?
I won't be here for the September meeting.
For the regular board meeting?
But I'll be here for the ad hoc.
Boy, you 2-year-old people just.
It breaks my heart, but you switched the date on it after I had something planned, so.
Okay, anybody want to move to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Does this mean that we
All
don't
in
need
favor?
Brian?
Aye.
Does this mean we don't need Brian?
No.
Yes or nay?
No.
No, it means that.
Oh, anybody,